This exercise should be familiar from the previous module. All it is the calculation here on Excel on a page of the compound discount rate that we introduced in module 1 under the treatment of growth. Here what's required is to write an Excel equation which basically encompasses this equation. I think this should be fairly straightforward since you've already done this exercise, so I'm not going to do a demonstration of it, except that I expect you to be able to take this yellow highlighting out by writing the correct equation here. We'll move now to using compound discount rates. This is an application of the compound discount rate found in the previous exercise. Let's put this together. Equals, open brackets. Now our equation is very simply 1 plus the discount rate, close brackets, divide, open brackets, 1 plus the growth factor, close brackets, subtract 1, equals 11.22%. We're now going to use this compounded discount rate to solve this particular problem. And the problem is to work out the value to the landowner of this lease agreement, which starts off with a $100,000 rent. It's going to operate over 10 years. There's anticipated growth of 2.5% and a discount rate to the landowner of 14%. To do this, we can simply use the PV function, equals PV, open brackets. The rate now is the compound discount rate, number of periods. Well, we'll only calculate on a yearly basis, but that'll be satisfactory for our purposes. The payment is going to be the rent. We'll put in a negative sign to correct our sign convention, close brackets, and we have a term value of 583,000. That's the exercise. It is useful for you to see this calculation done longhand to kind of prove in your own mind that in fact this discounted cash flow equation, the term value of the lease to the owner, is in fact true. We're going to do that by doing it on the year by year basis. To work out the rent at the end of the first year, I'm going to put in my growth functions and I'm going to use absolute addressing. So my rent at the end of year 1 is going to be the present value of the rent multiplied by, open brackets, 1 plus the growth factor. I'm going to take that as absolute, and I'm also going to absolute the starting rent. I'm going to close my brackets, raise that to the power which is equal to the year number. That gives me $102,000. The present value of that is going to equal the future value divided by 1 plus the discount rate, absolute, close brackets, raised to the year number. And so that means that at the end of the first year I receive $102,000. That's only worth $89,900 to me in present value terms. To work out all of the rest of these, I'm not going to do all of the equations, I'm simply going to fill the equations down, nice little shorthand. I would say that you'll notice here the $72,000 still has a yellow highlight sitting on it. That will be a rounding error in the auto correcting system, so you can ignore that. To work out the net present value, the total value of the lease, normally I'd use the auto sum function, but since this spreadsheet is locked, I'll have to write it in longhand. Equals sum, open brackets, the correct answer, and you'll notice that the 583,000 is the same as what was calculated previously in one step. Obviously this approach year by year takes a lot more computing than simply doing it in a single step. We'll move now to the fourth and final exercise, which are exercises in future value calculations. We don't tend to use these terribly much, but it's important for you to have a little bit of experience and familiarity with them, because on some occasions they can be very, very useful, usually as a part of other models. This exercise is going to get us to calculate the value of funds which are being invested for a particular time to see how much money will be left at the end of the period. This is fairly straightforward. I can calculate these using simple discounting and compounding factors, but I'm going to use the Excel functions for demonstration purposes. So the future value of the present funds, that's the $10,000, can be worked out by using the FV function in Excel. Here I have the rate, I have the number of periods, I have no payments, I'm going to put in an extra comma, and then I'll put a negative sign for my sign conventions, the $10,000, and hit return, and I've got $20,000. So in 6 years time, earning 12.5%, 12.34%, the $10,000 becomes $20,000. Moving on to the regular payments, same function, equals FV, open brackets, the rate, comma, the number of periods, comma. Here we're going to use a payment negative, and I can just close out the function, and that gives me 8,185. The sum of the above, I'll use the auto sum function just for pure laziness. That gives me that sum. Now I'm going to check this by doing it all at once with the Excel FV function, and so save myself a little bit of time. The rate 12.5, the number of periods 6, the number of periods is minus that cell, and the FV is minus that cell. Close brackets, done. And we can see that these are the same. And while you might say, well, I've got a test here, I'm giving you the opportunity to also test them longhand in the way we did with the previous exercise. I'm not going to bother to do that. It's going to be fairly straightforward for you, I think, to be able to work through and take out those yellow highlights. That completes these exercises. Make sure you do these yourself with the self-correcting exercise, so that you're not simply watching me, because it's important that you're able to use these functions quite flexibly and creatively as you build your own models. It would be even better now for you to perhaps use a blank Excel spreadsheet and do some of your own calculations totally yourself. And you can start with a cash flow diagram with the up and down arrows for things like loans or investments or rents or what have you, juggling them around the way you have with these exercises. The more conversant you are with these functions, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to interpret real live property problems into financial models into the future, which is exactly what this course is about.